Good evening. My name is Tova Felder. I'm based in Clifton. I'm scrapping a lot of this on the fly because I realized I had something else I needed to say. I have several things I wanted to say and ask about PARCC testing. The first, I submitted to get refusal numbers for our district on the basis of there not being a formal document. That's okay. I would just like the numbers. So if anybody could please just give me the numbers, which you must have because you need to report them, then that would be great. Thank you. Speaking of refusal numbers, principals telling their children that they cannot refuse for the second round of PARCC if they took it the first time. That's simply not true. The State Department of Education has issued a notice that if you took it the first time and refuse it the second time, then the whole test is refused. So clearly the state is acknowledging that people may decide to refuse it the second time around. It's confusing to parents who are not as doggedly informed as my family is about what's going on to tell them that they can't refuse. It's civil disobedience. They can refuse anytime they want, and it seems really disingenuous and sneaky, frankly, for Clifton principals to be telling their families otherwise. How does this board feel about these very important tests being scored by $12 an hour temporary employees hired off of Craigslist or may not have any education? You can go to Pearson's website yourself and see what their requirements are for being a scorer for these tests. They're very minimal. I know 3 different people who were hired to do this without ever having been interviewed, not even on the phone by Pearson, without ever having to even cough up a copy of their college diploma with requirement for employment. So for these very important tests, how can these scores possibly be meaningful when they're computed with such a lack of expertise and care? They're hiring people, sometimes from Craigslist and Facebook, children's tests, and the faster you score, the more you get paid. So that's certainly going to result in some very careful scoring. I don't see how that could possibly be acceptable. Another PARCC issue: how young is too young to be taking these tests? Several districts in our state have been field testing in 2nd grade this month. 2nd grade, 7 years old. It hurts me to know that this is what public education is becoming: test factories. It's spent in front of a screen. That's time lost on actual educational opportunities. Surely you can all agree that testing is not the same as teaching. A field test is little more than an experiment being conducted on our public school children by a for-profit company using taxpayer dollars and our children. Field tests on 7-year-olds is not for the benefit of anyone's children, it's for the benefit of Pearson, so they can perfect their own products. We should not be allowing this. When is this board going to stand up for its children and its teachers and tell David Hespe and Barry Ehrlichson that enough is enough? These tests are not good for us. Since I imagine that the primary argument against doing that is the fear of loss of federal funding, I will also say this: there are say that money must be withheld if schools fall participation rate. Additionally, the only real threat is not a loss of funds at all, but for Title I schools, a small percentage of their funding may be directed towards specific programs aimed at raising performance. That's really not a bad thing. I brought a short handout from fairtest.org to share with you, which goes into greater detail. Finally, I have to address the issue of school uniforms. It will be absolutely zero that I am aggressively and passionately against the idea of forcing uniformity on our children. There are many reasons for this, but the most important one is my kid doesn't want him to feel good when he heads off to school, physically and emotionally. I don't want him distracted by the feel of a collar on his neck, which he hates. I don't want him angry that he can't wear his new Pokemon t-shirt to show his friends. Research shows that a substantial majority of children are opposed to wearing uniforms. So why don't we ask the kids, not just the parents? Parents who, with all due respect, for some handle the role of parenting for them when it comes to dressing their kids. You can tell your kids no to $100 jeans. I do it all the time. Well, that's not true. My kids never asked for $100 jeans. But we can tell our kids no. It's not the school's responsibility to dress our children.